All right, guys, our next guest is making his first appearance on Submission Radio, picking up a win at UFC Fight Night 126. He's one of the youngest rising stars in the UFC lightweight division, already having 7 UFC fights and winning 5 of them. The man with one of the sharpest jaws in MMA, superhuman movement. He is what we thought was a perfect shoo-in for Ivan Drago's son in Creed 2. Super Sage Northcutt, welcome to Submission Radio. It's great to have you, man.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is all ours, but Sage, man, great to have you on the show. We are still getting over the fact that you didn't end up landing the role of Ivan Drago's son. Clearly somebody made a huge error, but now that the process is over, tell us, what did the self-tape audition that you did consist of, and how close did you actually come to getting it?
You know what? I sent the tape in. I had some friends of mine send it in, so I'm not sure how close I got to getting it, but I was definitely looking forward to the part, and that would have been super cool to play Ivan Drago's son. So that was definitely pretty cool. I did speak a little bit of a Russian accent, and then did a few other things like training wise for the video. So that was pretty neat. But you know what? There's other things to look forward to in the future, and some stuff that looks like might be in the works.
I know we're putting you on the spot, but is there any way we can have just a hint, just a slice of this Russian accent? Any way you can demonstrate it for us? I don't think anyone's ever heard you do a Russian accent, so this would be pretty wild.
Yeah, I could say something like very strong. You would say like very strong, very strong.
Is that kind of like that? Is that Khabib on the phone? This is Khabib Nurmagomedov on the phone.
Wow.
That's funny.
You just took us out of our element, Sage. And I mean, it doesn't hurt that the UFC is owned by WME IMG. You mentioned there's some other stuff happening. Do you mean that they've already set up some more opportunities and auditions for you, or cameos, or anything else in upcoming movies?
You know what? For sure. I'm not sure exactly if WME is going to be setting up stuff or not. I talk with them, so we're going to see, and that'd be incredible. I know they're an incredible company, and they have a modeling company also, so that'd be awesome. But there are some things in the works, and I know that playing as Ivan Drago's son wouldn't have been the main role or the main lead part for the movie, but it looks like maybe there's something that is the main part coming up. So that'd be a blast.
Really? So is that something that's already somewhat confirmed? You will be starring in something as the lead?
You know what? I'm not sure. I guess time will tell, and I'm looking forward to doing that in the future.
All right. Well, I mean, Rocky is a classic, but we want to find out, what are some of the other favorite movies that you sort of grew up with that sort of stand out in your heart of hearts when you think about a fun time?
Oh, you know what? I mean, obviously Rocky movies are really cool, but I like funny movies too. Like one I saw on TV just the other day was The Goonies. Have you ever seen The Goonies?
I haven't seen The Goonies. I know it's a classic. I'm sort of I'm really out of The Goonies loop. What did you think of it?
Oh, The Goonies, it's a pretty cool movie. It's kind of an older movie, but it's some kids that are trying to find One-Eye Willie's treasure. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool movie. I was just thinking of it because it was playing on my TV yesterday.
Yeah,
but yeah, you have to check it out.
Any dreams of possibly maybe being one of the characters in The Goonies if there's a remake one day?
You know what? That'd be pretty cool. That'd be fun.
I feel like that'd be like polar opposite, given what the Goonies are like, and given the way you are and the way you look. I feel like you'd be a lot more sort of suited for like a superhero movie. Obviously, that'd be one of the more obvious choices, given that there's a million superhero projects now. Tell us, Sage, are you sort of a Marvel guy or a DC guy, and who would you say are your top 3 favorite superhero characters?
Oh man, you know what? That is so tough to try to decide between those two, but. Oh, I don't even know. I obviously love Superman. Superman's so cool. I saw the new Thor movie. That was pretty incredible too. And then obviously I think everybody likes Spider-Man too. So Spider-Man's a good one also.
Who do you think you identify with most? Are you leaning towards Superman, Spider-Man, or maybe Thor? Who sort of, I guess, do you see more of yourself in?
Man, you know what? I guess people call me Super Sage, so
yeah.
kind of like a Superman because the qualities. So that's pretty neat. But every one of them are cool.
Speaking of cool things, you've been on a 2-fight win streak right now in the UFC. Let's talk about this crazy journey that's been a UFC career. You began as pretty much a teenager after being discovered by Dana White on his Looking for a Fight show. Now, looking back on it a few years later, did you realize what would be in store for you in this crazy journey?
You know what? It's more than I could expect or imagine. So it's so much fun. Things are so organized with the UFC and so planned out. And everything's so amazing. The UFC itself, Mr. White, everybody at the UFC is so incredible and so generous and nice, and the way they do everything, it's run so great that it makes it a fun time too. So it's more than I can imagine. Being 21 years old now, fighting for the UFC, having 7 fights at the UFC, it's just an amazing experience. I'm looking forward to the future of it.
I mean, we all remember our teenage years, me and Casper as well. We're getting a bit older now, but we remember them. It's not hard to make mistakes, have some crazy ideas in the back of our head. Can you remember what you were like when you got signed? Were there any crazy ideas or things floating around in your head that kind of you think back to now and kind of make you shudder a little bit about yourself at that time?
Say, you know what? I was actually in school at the time that I heard from the UFC. So I actually had a fight with a league called Legacy, fighting before the UFC, and Mr. White actually had to show Dana White looking for a fight. He was actually there with Matt Serra and Nick the Tooth at my fight, and then come to find out he wanted me to fight for the UFC for, I believe, UFC 192, and that was in Houston, Texas. So that was a few months later, and I'm actually studying petroleum engineering in college at my university, and then it's a totally different experience going from staying up until 1 or 2 every single night, just studying my butt off every single night, and then now fighting for the UFC and getting to train super hard, and now I'm getting to actually train at one of the best camps in the whole world at Team Alpha Male. So it's really incredible, actually.
Yeah, obviously, it's been a couple of years now and time really flies, but you're still super young. You're still only 21. What do you think is the biggest difference between the Sage of today compared to the Sage from a couple of years ago that got signed to the UFC in seemingly a blink of an eye?
You know what? There's a few things. I think one of the biggest things is that now it's one thing's time. So I'm getting to learn experience, and I'm actually getting to train at a camp. So my first several fights in the UFC, and even before the UFC, I was in high school, then I was in college at my university and studying full time to be a petroleum engineer. So now, after a few fights, I withdrew from my college, and now I'm actually getting to train all my time and focus every single bit of it to be the best fighter in the UFC I can be, and train at the best camp, one of the best camps in the whole entire world, Team Alpha Male. So I think that's one of the biggest things right there.
And obviously, you began your journey at a young age, and you're on posters, commercials, magazines. You're obviously a young guy who's in shape. It must have been really drawing a lot of attention from lots of different people, from girls being recognized on the street. How did that affect you initially? Because, I mean, it's not something that people are really used to having. And how do you deal with all that attention now compared to back then?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I see it as I see it pretty much as being like fun for me, and then I have so much respect for being in the spot I'm actually at for the UFC and where I'm at. It's an honor. So if I'm getting to meet people or there's people waiting out for me to say hi to them or take a picture or maybe sign something, or I get to meet a fan on a train over in Canada or Russia or wherever it might be, that's an amazing experience for me. So I think that the fans are such a big part of the sport. They make the sport. Without them, then the people want to be tuning in for the UFC, and it wouldn't be the same. They make it fun for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like at your age, everybody else, we see the videos of like American colleges, and Australia's no different. Everyone's partying, they're going out, they're having a few beers. We saw obviously with what happened with certain fighters. We saw what happened with John Jones and other athletes in the past. Where do you sit on, I guess, the party scene? Because you don't really strike us as a typical party guy. What are your theories on sort of what's right and what's wrong? And for example, if you're done with training for a week or you're not in a fight camp, is it wrong to go out and enjoy yourself a little bit, or do you like to sort of blow off a lot of steam, and if you do, what do you do?
You know what, for me, I'm training the whole entire week. It could be anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day, depending on what I'm doing. And then when I take a break on the weekend, if it's Saturday or if it's Sunday for a break or both days, then I'm going out to do something fun. So like me and the team at Team Alpha Male, we go out, we go hiking, mountain biking, we'll go swimming in like a waterfall that's coming down, it has like a stream going down the mountains. Fun stuff like that, and hanging out with my friends I've been staying with, Daniel and Anthony at their house. So we'll go out wakeboarding and wake surfing and just have fun.
Any crazy stories while you're hanging out with the guys from Team Alpha Male and you're doing some of the the outdoor activities? We know they do a lot of crazy stuff. So a few extreme sports. It's almost like a Cowboy Cerrone situation. Any crazy stories you've got there?
Oh, you know what? I mean, there's always probably crazy stories. But one of the first times I was up in Sacramento, California, I was up in the mountains, and this is almost towards Lake Tahoe area. I'm up in the mountains. I went running and climbed this waterfall by myself. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I climbed about 2 miles past the waterfall, and all of a sudden everything gets real quiet. Well, I didn't know at the time, but there's black bears up there. So I heard something grunting. All I had was a little tiny knife on me, just for like protection or just because I need it. But it couldn't do anything to a black bear, I don't think. So what I did was I hid behind the water that was coming down the waterfall, and it was absolutely freezing. So I hid for about 5 minutes. I didn't move, and when I heard the grunting stop, I just took off sprinting. I literally sprinted 2 miles as fast as I could, hiked down the waterfall, and made it back to my truck. So that was a crazy story. I felt like I was gonna get eaten.
Wow, we don't really have bears here in Australia, so that's and you sprinting 2 miles. That's probably like what three seconds for you because you're a fast guy. Did you? How scared were you in that moment? Did you think this might be it when you heard that black bear grunting?
You know what? It was pretty crazy because at first I was like, man, maybe it's a cougar, maybe it's something. I didn't know what it was, and I'm over behind the waterfall where the water is coming down, and I take my phone out and I'm trying to Google if there's bears in California, and then I remember like I saw a statue of a bear, like it was like a gold bear or silver bear or something in Sacramento, like an hour and a half away. So I was like, okay, there's got to be bears. So then I just waited. And I was completely quiet, didn't move. And then when it stopped, my heart was definitely racing because I took off so fast. Like my adrenaline was going so much. I felt like I was floating on my feet, like flying.
Whoa,
that's unbelievable.
It was insane.
We want to touch on the influence Team Alpha Male has had on you. But before we do that, we know you spent a lot of time with UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley, getting him ready for the Stephen Thompson fight. What happened with the chicken? Because we all saw the video. Did you really never season it before? Did Woodley really show you Flavor Country that day for the first time?
You know what? Every time I've ever cooked, I've never seasoned my chicken until then.
Oh.
So he seasoned one side, and I was like, man, that's a lot of seasoning. He goes, no, Sage. He flips it over. He goes, we got to do both sides. He starts seasoning the other side. I was like, oh my goodness. I'm freaking out, wondering like what it's gonna taste like. Tasted amazing. He can definitely cook because that was good.
Has he? I feel like he's. Go on.
Oh, I don't know if you saw or not, but we during his camp when I was there, me, him, and his videographer named Lamarck, we all had chicken feet and we grilled them on the grill. And I don't know if you saw that, but that was definitely a first for me. And it had the fingernails attached, and we were trying to eat the whole thing. It was crazy tasting.
At the end with the chicken feet, if the nails left over, you can use them just in case you run into any more bears. You know, if you're low on weapons, bam, chicken foot, and black bear's taken care of. What do you season your chicken with now, Sage? Now that Woodley's shown you the dark arts, he's taking you to the dark side and showing you this new world. What are you seasoning your chicken with? Or have you gone back to seasonless chicken?
You know what? It depends. I mean, I've been using. We like barbecue sauce, so I've been using barbecue sauce. Been using some different kind of seasonings. Like I don't even know what kind of seasoning he used exactly, but I know my family, my parents back home have different seasonings that they told me about, so I've been using them.
Life has changed for Sage, and Woodley is a bit understood by fans and media. Where do you sit in public perception? Why do you think it's so out of hand at the moment?
You know what? I'm not sure too much about what's going on. I know people were complaining about one of his previous fights when he fought Damian Maia. And if you look at it, he fought such an incredible grappler, jiu-jitsu artist, one of the best jiu-jitsu artists in the whole UFC. If not, people say he is the best. And Mr. Woodley stopped all of his takedowns, threw him off, fought a very smart fight, and fought to go out there and win and beat him. So that's what he did. And so many people tried to do more out there, and they got submitted or got pulled down to the ground and got finished. So I'm not sure. He's a champion of the UFC, and if you get to know Mr. Woodley, he's super funny, super nice, and he's super fun to be around.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what do you think people are sort of missing about Tyron Woodley? Because, like we mentioned, there's a certain perception of him. But a lot of the people with that perception, they haven't really spent a lot of time with him. As someone who's spent, a considerable amount of time, and hey, he seasoned your chicken, so there's a strong bond there. I mean, how would you describe Tyron Woodley? And what do you think people aren't really seeing about him?
Oh, you know what? He is so generous. If you're ever around him, he's so generous and he's so nice. He's such a kind heart. Like we'll be going out like after training stuff, and he's always buying everybody's food. So friendly. He'll be helping out people on the street. We'll go for a run, and he's just like having fun listening to music the whole time and like dancing while he's running or taking videos and Snapchat. He's like a super down to earth person, and also he's a champion of the UFC. He's so talented, so he's accomplished so much to be able to be there.
Well, let's move to Team Alpha Male, because we know it's at another level when it comes to structure, support system for fighters, facilities, mentorship. Describe what's it really like being a part of the team there.
You know what? It's amazing because I've never actually had a team or a camp that I've been at, so that's definitely a first. And everybody has such a positive energy. Everybody goes out there and trains so hard. The work ethic. Sorry about that. And then everybody has a drive out there. So it's like one person gets better, another person gets better. So we all build each other up every single day. It's amazing.
How would you say is sort of a stark contrast to, before you moved out to Team Alpha Male? Because obviously you spent a lot of time, you had your father training you as well. And you mentioned how when you were first signed to the UFC, you were focusing a lot on school. So was this a big sort of, I guess, stark contrast for you to see, what it's like training at a big elite, top level MMA gym?
Absolutely. Huge contrast. Training back home in Texas, I've never had any training partners for MMA.
Wow.
Really. So I've never actually had a camp. I've never had really any kind of sparring. So, and then also being in school at the same time, I never really got to train. So coming out to Team Alpha Male, it's totally different. I have some of the best training partners in the whole entire world. High caliber people that were champions for the UFC, are champions, UFC Hall of Famer, Mr. Faber, as my coach and my trainers. So many different aspects of everything that's making me a better fighter. So people that have been there and have done it and have accomplished so much, and they're right there as my training partners or my coaches.
And what is it like working with a guy like Cody or Urijah? Because obviously 2 former champions, Urijah Hall of Famer. What have you been able to pick up from them, and what's it like being around them in the gym day by day?
You know what? Both Cody Garbrandt and Mr. Faber are both so energetic and so happy. Every time they come in the gym, everybody's like lifted up and excited to train, excited to get after it, and excited to work hard. So that's the same for both of them. And they're both so incredible. So you're learning something every single day. And it might be Cody Garbrandt coming over there and saying, hey, Sage, when you throw that punch, you got to turn this way a little bit. Or, hey, Sage, when you grapple from that situation, maybe just keep rolling out of this or that. And Mr. Faber's over there helping me out, being so hands-on. And to have somebody that's that caliber and a UFC Hall of Famer, so incredible. Never been submitted out of 41 of his fights. He's over there hands-on helping me out every single day. That's a big deal for me.
I love it. And the crazy thing about you is obviously, you're raised right and you're so respectful. You call everybody by their surname. But it's crazy to imagine. Do you, when you're sitting here talking about Urijah Faber and you're calling him Mr. Faber and Mr. Garbrandt, is that what you call them in training, or do you ever just throw out a Urijah or Cody, or is it always, sort of, do you have that politeness all the time?
Oh, no, I always try to keep the politeness. Now, Cody Garbrandt, me and him, I'll be like, what's up, Cody? Because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's almost kind of like brothers somewhat, even though I know we're not brothers, but like good friends like that. And obviously I'm always trying to be respectful to everybody. So Mr. Faber, I always call Mr. Faber, and always try to keep the respect for sure.
Let's talk about your last fight, because it went to a unanimous decision when it was a close fight. And there are some people out there who believe you lost that fight. Where do you stand on it now that it's been a few weeks since it's happened?
You know what? I definitely could have performed better out there. But anybody that goes out there, if they think it was that close of a fight, the other person should have won. It might have been a close fight, but if you go look at the significant strikes and the strikes thrown, I think I over tripled the amount of strikes I threw than him, and do more than double, almost triple the amount of significant strikes, if I believe if that's correct. And when he had me against the cage or down on the ground, I was working my way back up, but he never was able to advance the position. He was never able to get to side control or mount or take my back or any of those positions. He was never able to move off my legs or even throw one strike on the ground. I don't believe he threw one punch. I don't believe he threw one knee. I don't believe he threw one elbow. He wasn't able to do that, and he didn't. So me on the ground, I was cracking down elbows on him and being the aggressor and creating more damage, even though he might have just been holding me there. So I believe I outworked him, and if you look at the score sheets and the stats that somebody posted, it shows it too.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, every time you fight, there's such a huge, I guess, spotlight. There's so much attention on you. You know, people are obviously interested. I believe I was reading that some of the best ratings for that show were when you were fighting. Does that put extra pressure on you? And sort of, you know, does it ever affect you when people discuss, you know, whether or not you belong in the UFC, when people sort of scrutinize your fights and have that discussion? Is that tough for you?
You know what? It's not tough for me. I believe I do belong in the UFC. I've trained my whole entire life since I was a little kid. I started training at 4.5 years old. I made it my goal to be in the UFC. And the people I beat, or even the tough fights I have had, these are fighters in the UFC. And no fighter in the UFC is a slouch or somebody that shouldn't be there. So I mean, I know people might say some people maybe shouldn't be there in the UFC, but they made it into the UFC. So I'm out there putting out my best performance. I'm training hard, and even though I might be young, I'm getting better every single day. So the next fight that's going to come up, I'm going to be so much better, and the next fight after that be so much better, and working to get the title. And that's what I believe I'm going to do, and I know that the corrections that I'm going to make with Team Alpha Male and my coaches and my dad and my performance I just had, I have so much stuff I'm going to correct and make myself so much better. It's going to be amazing.
And talk to us a little bit about your dad, because we know he's a big influencer in your life. How does he work alongside Team Alpha Male? Is he out there with you, helping out with training? How much input does he have on your day-to-day training right now?
You know what? I've been at Team Alpha Male by myself, obviously, and been the same with Mr. Faber's neighbors, actually, who's super awesome and super generous, and they've been letting me stay with them at their house, so that's a huge blessing. And my dad hasn't been out there while I've been training, but he's every single day I'm talking about my training with him, FaceTime him, talking to him on the phone, whatever it might be, and we're discussing my training and game plan, everything that's going on. So my dad's been my coach since I've been a little kid and understands me, how I train, my work ethic, everything about me. I eat my food, my performance, every single thing. So he's a big part of everything for sure.
And you mentioned some of the improvements. Obviously, you showed a lot of improvements when you came back after the fight with Mickey Gall. And obviously, you were scheduled in between that point, so it wasn't that you exactly took time off. But it seems like that time off really helped you. And most fighters, you know, they improve most when they're not taking back-to-back fights, when they're sort of taking time out to work on themselves, to improve on their game. Given that you're you know, really young, do you feel like you can afford to take that time off to really hone your skills as opposed to just racing to get back into the octagon? What's I guess the priority for you?
Oh, you know what? I actually didn't take any time off. I know people might see this taking time off, but if they didn't know, I fought very sick for my fights, and also I never trained at a camp. So I fought Mickey Gall. I fought Brian Barberina at 170. I fought Brian Barberina for the first fight at 170, for instance. I wasn't even actually a 170. I was planning to fight at 155. My opponent got injured, and a few days before the fight, I moved up a weight class. So wasn't even a true 170. When I fought Mickey Gall, I didn't even have a camp I was training at. Wasn't even training like pretty much at all. So now I have the ability to train at a camp. And after that fight, the time that people might see as me taking off, I actually been so sick for all my fights. I had my tonsils taken out. So they literally pulled my tonsils out of my throat and burned them and used like a solder and iron to seal my throat so I wouldn't bleed out. And then I had to heal up from that. Then I had one fight scheduled. My opponent backed out. He got injured. Then I had another fight scheduled with John McDessie. He backed out and got injured. And then the next one I had my fight where I fought Mitchell Quinones after that. So I've been trying to have the fights and trying to stay active. It's just, fortunately, I had a few opponents get injured and I had my tonsils taken out. So
do you sorry to cut in, Dennis, do you feel like you sort of, I guess, want to make up that time and sort of take a bunch of fights back to back? Or if it was up to you, would you sort of prefer to, I guess, you know, work at Team Alpha Male and I guess, you know, just work on honing those skills, or you feel you can sort of make those necessary improvements by taking back-to-back fights?
You know what? I think having a fight maybe every 3 or 4 months, whatever it might be, or maybe even sooner, I guess we're going to see, will give me time after my fight to be able to make my skills sharper, go and improve anything I do, and become a better fighter at the same time. So I think I can fight very frequently and make myself better at the same time, because I have the ability to train at an actual camp and with great training partners and improve my skills.
Well, obviously, you're in a good position. You're 2 wins up. You're in a world-famous camp. Is there a name that you want next? Is there an opponent in mind for your next fight? And are you hoping you get someone with a bit more name value for your next fight?
you know what? I know the UFC picks my fights for me, so they're the ones that takes care of my fights and who I fight and what goes on and when and where. So I'll be hearing from them, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next fight.
Marc Diakiese actually called you out recently. He's trying to do the UFC's job for them, saying that he makes sense for you. Is he on your radar at all? Do you think that fight makes sense for you and that you'd gain a lot from beating him? Because that's what he's claiming.
Oh, really? That's funny. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually planning on moving up to 170 for my next fight, because fighting at 155, I believe it's the weight cut. The last 3 or 4 pounds is really tough. I walk around underneath 3% body fat pretty much all the time, and the last 3 or 4 pounds is pretty tough on my weight cut, and I think it's affecting my performance a little bit. So I guess we're gonna see what happens.
Wow. When did you make the decision to go back to 170?
You know what? I think I want to fight very frequently. So fighting at 155, cutting that weight that often to fight frequently will be definitely very tough. So if I'm having a few fights at 170 and then go up and fight someone, like you said, with higher in the rankings, as you said, or super high quality, whatever it might be, that might be the case. Have a few fights at 170 and then be able to cut the weight and be healthy and go down for a big fight, like bigger fight or higher name or a higher ranking, whatever it might be. So I guess I'm talking to it with my coaches and figure it out.
So how much of an effect did cutting the weight down really have on you when you look back on your performances, such as your last few performances? Do you feel like you were drained in the fights, that you didn't have as much energy, that it had sort of an effect on you because of the weight cut?
You know what? I always have great energy, and I always feel pretty good. But I just know that the last 3 or 4 pounds, the weight cut is pretty tough for me because my body fat is so low, and I'm not sure if it is the healthiest, since I do walk around under 3% body fat pretty much all the time. Yeah. When I had it checked. So I from looking at my performances in the UFC and then my performances in training, it is totally different, and I believe it's partially because of the weight cut, but I'm gonna talk with my coaches and get it figured out and see what the plan is.
Was the weight cut for your last fight the most difficult for you? Can you think back to what the most difficult weight cut process was for you and which fight that was?
You know what? I have had some pretty tough weight cuts. Every single one to get down to 155 is definitely pretty tough to get there, because the last little bit is definitely hard. My body might stop sweating, or maybe it's hard to lose the last few pounds. But I believe I'm getting older now, a few years in the UFC, and my muscles maturing more. I'm getting a little bit taller, a little bit stronger, more muscular. So we're gonna see exactly what the game plan is. But I believe I am going up to 170.
Wow, well, there you go. And you feel sort of you're better suited for that compared to the first time when you were up at 170? Because I think back then you were saying you weren't really a 170 pounder, and now I guess you sort of, grown into yourself, you're more of a real 170 pounder, right?
Right, absolutely. I've had 2 fights in the UFC at 170. My first fight, I went to 170 on like a 3 or 4 days notice. So less than a week's notice, because I was scheduled to fight at 155. I was already cutting down the low 160s to be able to get ready to finish the last part of my weight cut, and then my opponent got injured. Andrew Holbrook broke his foot. So moved up to 170 last minute. I will think that it will be different, because my last fight at 170 against Mickey Gall, I didn't have a training camp. I was in school studying to be a petroleum engineer. My focus wasn't focused full-time on fighting. I didn't have the ability to have training partners and sparring and people correcting me and the best coaches in the world. So I think it's going to be different experience now.
And just quickly on that, there's a fighter fighting out of Australia, Jake Matthews. You guys have been sort of linked for a long time now. A lot of people believed that you guys were going to fight each other down at lightweight. Is that a fight that you'd be interested in, possibly in welterweight, especially with the timing now with both of you guys moving up to welterweight and Jake getting a couple of decent wins?
Oh, you know what? The UFC, I know like I said, the UFC takes care of my fights, and they're the ones, they have the matchmaker that picks the fights and decides when I'm going to fight and when and what's going on. So it's up to them.
All right, well, there you go, guys. We can't wait to see who you get up next, especially at 170. It's a whole new world of possibilities for you. Obviously, don't forget to follow the man on Twitter and Instagram at Sage Northcutt. Very excited to see what happens with you next, Sage. Really appreciate the time. We'll let you go. We know you're over in Texas right now, but good luck when you go over back to California for Team Alpha Male and do some training. And watch out for those bears. You don't need to Google them. Now you know they're there, so watch out for them. And thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.